Ti ricordi quella sera che per gioco tu baciai? Sembrava solo un'avventura.
Okay, so we are here with Tanner from StableC. I'm so excited for this conversation. Another session. We're live here in Mexico City for Bitso Business's first ever Stablecoin Conference. It's a buzzing, you can't see it, but it's a buzzing hall full of hundreds of people all talking about stablecoins. So Tanner, really excited to have you here. Thank you for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
A lot of exciting conversations to be had today, but appreciate it.
Very much so. The floor is abuzz with activity out here. So excellent.
Yeah, man. Okay. StableC, you guys are new to the game in some ways, but also not new to the game in other ways. I'd love to just hear the story of what you've been building. I know a lot of the team here came from Block and were very convicted about stablecoins early on. Give us the story of how StableC came to be, because I feel like that's an interesting place to start.
Yeah, for sure. So we come out of Block and we were building stablecoin infrastructure there. And one of the main challenges that we saw in terms of building with stablecoin native protocols and stablecoin native infrastructure for cross-border payments is that if you wanted to move small transaction sizes, right? So like $20, $200, $2,000, even $100,000, you can essentially build into different providers out there and you can send money. The FX may or may not be more expensive than fiat, and it works generally well today. But one of the problems that we were seeing in the market is that when companies wanted to move a large ticket, so large ticket defined as like 500,000, a million, 5 million, 10 million, either for Treasury or for merchant payments, you can't really do that programmatically today, right? What happens is when you go to move like a $10 million transaction, whoever the provider is going to say, can't fulfill the order, please use our OTC service. And OTC trading still in the stablecoin space is you get a telegram number and you just call somebody.
It's very manual.
Yeah, it's super manual, right? And like the promise of stablecoin is that it's programmatic, it's 24/7, 365, all the things. And that is definitely true for retail payment activity. But when you want to move into the B2B world, which is where over 90% of the cross-border payments in the fiat world are B2B in nature, they're wholesale transactions. The class of transactions you're talking about, big settlements, large scale payments, need this stuff. Yeah, big time, right? It's like, just imagine the payments volume that one company like a John Deere does monthly, right? Because they've got operations in quite literally every country in the world.
Wow.
And they need to move their treasuries around. They need to pay vendors in their supply chain. They need to collect funds because they're making revenue in XYZ country. They need to take those funds out of like X currency, repatriate that to like Euro, Swiss franc, US dollar, etc. And so even just in one kind of mega cap company, you can have a massive amount of volume going through the systems. And so for us, we like being at Block, talking to that ecosystem. A lot of the companies out there were considering using stablecoin for large transactions, right? Into different countries. And so the problem though was because you got flipped to a OTC desk, which was a telegram number and you had a message, that really broke the experience down of stablecoin. They're like, actually JP Morgan and Citi work just fine. To the extent that my team doesn't have to trade on a third-party messaging application, fine with just the banks.
I mean, Telegram is already like kind of sketchy generally, or like unfamiliar. So it's like, not only are you going to download this Telegram app, but now you're doing it for this like extremely high value. It doesn't feel like a trusted experience. I can imagine that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, in some ways the stablecoin world mirrors the fiat world in a lot of ways, in terms of like fiat world had the same issue, right? Like you could trade programmatically for a while, and then for large tickets, you would have your counterparty, and then like Bloomberg got its like the trading desk where you had your different counterparty. I was at Citi, you're at Morgan Stanley. We'd always be like chatting back and forth. And so that world is kind of true today in stablecoin, where like you call your counterparty to negotiate, you call via Telegram, which is fine for like a kind of a company that is of a certain size and shape. But if you want stablecoin to actually be diffused into the Fortune 500, the Fortune 1000, the Fortune 5000, it can't be on messaging apps, right? It needs to be a little bit more kind of secure. Sorry, the story long to get to the point, which is the main insight that we had, which we had conviction around, was that stablecoin infrastructure is built for retail payments today. And there's not many folks out there that are focused on solving both the UI UX and the workflow experience, as well as the liquidity challenges for B2B transactions. And so we said that looks like a spot that needs to be solved because, we want to have the traditional economy participate. Like right now, it's a bunch of fintech applications and marketplaces and tech forward companies that are like digging into stables, which is absolutely critical and needed for the ecosystem. But like also,
these aren't the John Deeres of the world. These aren't the like entrenched financial powerhouse companies. These are like, more modern, newer kind of forward companies. But it sounds like you guys are really, not that you're not going to serve those companies, but it seems like you get pretty fired up around how could like multinational boring companies use this technology for the flows that they're doing at that level, which you said it's 80% roughly of like.
Yeah, I mean, don't quote me on it. I think somebody on Google or ChatGPT fact check me on it, but I'm pretty
sure the majority of payments are large institutional.
I think I think the total market for cross-border payments in the fiat world is $195 trillion annually, and about 90% of that is B2B, right? Wow. Like remittances, consumer, like contractor payments, payroll payouts, that equates to maybe 1 or 2% of the overall flows. So if you crack the B2B space,
wait. Okay, this is huge. This is like mind blown. Okay, so all of those that you just mentioned don't fall into that bucket. Say them again. Payouts. Say the like.
So if you're doing remittances, if you're doing payroll, if you're doing
vendor.
If you're doing like gig economy, so like freelancer payments, right?
Okay.
All of that stuff doesn't get categorized as B2B payment ultimately.
Okay. And so B2B payments, are these mainly treasury movements, or how do you like define that a little bit more?
Yeah, it's categorically it is a business paying another business, not a business paying a consumer or a consumer paying a business. Okay. So if you think about it with that regard, a business can pay itself. So like if you've got John Deere in the US and then John Deere operating company in South Africa, you can do kind of John Deere, which is a treasury movement. And then you've got B2B merchant payments, right? Where like you have let's say you're Apple or insert X big company, and you have a vendor in South Africa, Colombia, wherever it is. You can pay out that merchant for the goods and services rendered to the business. So still build B2B, like business to business payment. Right?
Okay. And these are definitely different, right? Like a John Deere entity to entity. The use cases there are very different, where like John Deere is sitting on both sides of that versus like an external third party. Technically though, what's happening in the traditional banking world from a cost standpoint or a speed standpoint, they're not that different, or are they? Like, does John Deere have some legacy advantages because they're doing treasury or like, moving those funds within their own entities? Because when I think about at least a lot of the energy or the product market fit a lot of companies we speak with are seeing is this like treasury use case for treasury management. Do you see like the pain there is actually pretty equal, regardless if you're paying an external party or not?
Yeah, there's a few things to call out here, and we can nerd out on product too if we want to. But paying out a merchant, that experience is going to be different than paying out a treasury or like just doing a on me transaction. So like Coca-Cola to Coca-Cola. Two different product experiences that need to be true there. And then secondly, what is important on both sides of the equation also differ. If you're doing a merchant payment, cost is definitely key, right? Because if you sign a contract with somebody, the payment terms in the contract are always going to be net 30, net 15, maybe even net 45, right? In terms of like when you have to pay out for the goods and services rendered. So price is key on merchant payouts. On the treasury movement side of the equation, stablecoin, and I hope I am proven wrong on this, stablecoin will need to, because it is not there today, it is not as cost effective as wholesale FX rates. If you're Coca-Cola or insert X mega cap company or big company, you're getting wholesale FX rates from Citibank and Goldman and JP that are just unprecedented, right? We're talking like under half a basis point for like dollar mix. And so stablecoin has to come down to that. But the value proposition for larger companies to do treasury movements, it's not in the price, it's in the settlement time. Because ultimately, in the G20 markets, honestly, the correspondent banking system works just fine. Like, I don't know if you're going to see stablecoin, the Canadian dollar, really take off. Like, correspondent banking, especially if you're a big company, like, it's just, those corridors have been around for a while. The correspondent banking system works, always T+2, but that's fine. You factor it into your payment operations or business operations because you've been in business for like the last 100 years, right? That said, if you're trying to get funds into countries that do not have a lot of banks that are part of the SWIFT network or the correspondent banking system, it does take a long time. So like to get funds into West Africa or the West African currency of ZAF, if you want to do a $20 million treasury movement from X bank in the US to a bank in West Africa, like it will take you between 3 to 5 days, if not longer, for those funds to settle. So if you're a big merchant, actually time to settlement is more important than cost within reason, right? So there has to be a caveat there that price can't be like, it can't be 200 basis points.
Yeah.
So settlement time is like super key on the treasury use case. Cost is key on the merchant pass.
Yeah. Okay. Really interesting. When you think about where StableC as a business is going, well, I have to ask because I'm ex-Block as well. And I was like, I think right around the time I left there, TBD was like a new cool thing at the company. I started seeing as like, I was at Coinbase, was trying to figure out like, is there an opportunity to go back and like lead stablecoin stuff at Block? Like I love Block. I'm from St. Louis. I think, I just love the business, kind of gave me the world of payments, like from an insight standpoint. So I was really excited when I started seeing like these stablecoin things happen. Like what actually went down there? Like, if you can speak to that, is this like not, from your understanding, a strategic priority for Block in this way? And like, what made you guys, because most of like Julie and the team, like we're all there and now, what made you feel like you had to do this outside of Block?
Yeah, we still have really good relations with Block, like love the Block team, just a great group of engineers. You being there as well, it's like the culture is just,
it seems like there's a ton of momentum right now. Like OBJ is like coming in and like, seems like there's just a lot of excitement for the business. I don't know if you feel like that, but it seems like I'm speaking for myself. There's kind of like this weird couple year period of like, where are they going? Where's the business heading? But yeah, I was like, why did all of these incredible kick-ass people who were building in stablecoins? Yeah, I know it's like probably not the best thing to ask you, but I'm selfishly so curious, like as a stockholder for Block and supporter of that business.
Yeah, I mean, we're still big champions of the business for sure. A lot of great relationships over there. So, I mean, as you can appreciate, can't speak to the internal nuances and the thoughts over there, but can definitely speak to the insights that we saw in the market and that the reason that we left and subsequently the reason that we started StableC was like this B2B problem needed to be solved with like deep liquidity and better UI UX experiences around it.
And it can be solved maybe in a more like flexible, nimble, we can own this and go do this ourselves, and we have the recipe and the people, and like let's just go do this. Was that sort of the spirit? Like, let's just go tackle this on our own.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Okay, so you're tackling it, you're laser focused. How's it been going? You announced your was it a seed round, a pre-seed round 4 or 5 months ago, something like that? What have you learned since then? I feel like I saw this awesome event you guys did last week with Kindred, and what's the current state of how it's going?
Yeah, it's going really well, to be honest. I mean, the market is treating us better than we thought. So knock on wood, if I can find some wood in here, I'll knock on it. So really good. I mean, I think one of the things that we are focused on ultimately is like, we go after, like, if you're in the Valley and you build software, you're essentially building APIs. If you build APIs and market yourself as such, you sell inherently to developers. That sales cycle, that go-to-market motion, marketing, all of that stuff is of a different nature than if you're selling to a treasurer or a CFO.
Okay.
And with that, like, if you go to any treasurer or like any CFO around the world, if you go and try and sell them API documentation, and you say, we've got the best API docs, it's amazing, the data that's spit out, it's cleansed, it's formatted in this, they're going to be like, what?
How do I use this?
Yeah. So show me something tangible, right? And so for us, one of the big things that there's 2 insights that we saw. One was the B2B challenge for liquidity and how do you make that how do you solve that? The second was this usability problem, right? Because I think not least stablecoin, but even in the crypto ecosystem kind of writ large, you have some of the best and brightest minds in technology building in the crypto ecosystem. Everyone gets stuck in this spiral of like, we built this piece of infrastructure that connects to this infrastructure that has this API that connects to this database. And all the while, like the real economy is just like, okay, how do I use it? And so for stablecoin to break out of the kind of technology ecosystem of like London, Amsterdam, New York, San Francisco, you really need to have workflows and like experiences that a human can just log on and say, wow, that's amazing. Because like while we're here in Mexico City, and I love nerding out on all the intricacies of product and the underlying infrastructure of stablecoin technologies, ultimately, if you're to sell to folks in the traditional industries, they don't care if it's fiat or if it's USDC or if it's big. They don't care what happens under the hood, so long as it is compliant, it is quick, it is trustworthy, it is safe, and it is relatively cost effective, right? And so if we take, I mean, one of the things that I think would be really interesting is like in 5 or 10 years, if no one actually talked about stablecoin, because it just became ubiquitous. Yes, in the fintech space, we still talk about ACH and Wire and RTP and FedNow and UPI and PIX and all the things, which is great for the fintech community. But like, if you go into a traditional business and insert X country or X state in the United States, no one's talking about the underlying mechanics. It's like, I use X provider and it works awesome, right? And like, that's where we need to get to as a community in stablecoins. But to do that is you need to have user experiences, you need to have workflows on top of the infrastructure that bring all the good work that every community around the globe is doing to further the stablecoin space. You need to bring that to life. You need to bring it to life in a really simple and elegant way.
Yeah. And StableC, from a product standpoint, that takes shape where I can go, I have this dashboard, this terminal that you've built. Walk us through like, one, what I'm really curious to hear is like, what are you guys, because you're owning this, not from what you're saying, an API developer, go build your own thing. This thing's ready. You can use it. It's connected to all these pieces that we can tell you about, but you don't need to care if you don't care. What are the under the hood pieces? Like, what are the things that you guys might be wanting to build and own versus things that, you're bringing really strategic partners in to solve for in the short term, or to do what you're talking about, to your point, is very complex. And how have you kind of thought through owning that customer relationship, but also knowing when it makes sense to like partner or integrate to make it work in the early days?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we work with a handful of strategic partners on the infrastructure side. And then on where we're really focused from a business perspective is on that workflow layer. And we want it to be as simple as that magical moment where a person that has no idea what stablecoin is logs into the platform, and you've chatted with them maybe once or twice before. You're like, what's your pain point? They say, hey, I really struggle moving funds into like Ghanaian cedi, like in Ghana, right? It's like, okay, do you have a bank account in Ghana? Yes. Okay, log on to the platform, and then that magical experience should just be, we spin them up a wallet, and then we pull funds off their account into that wallet, convert to a stablecoin that we can either surface as a stablecoin or just as US dollar. Doesn't really matter. It depends on what they want to see. And then they can see their bank account, and then they can just move directly to the bank account. It should be that simple of like, plug your bank account in, here's your wallet, fund said wallet, and we can move funds anywhere in the world for you. And like, when that happens, that is that magical, almost Apple-like experience of like, hey, I actually had no idea about stablecoin, and I don't even care if I want to know, but like, this thing is making my life super easy, or like it's making my life a lot better, and driving a lot of efficiencies there. And so we're really, really keenly focused on making sure that the human aspect of this isn't missed, and that a human logs in and they're like, super simple.
And the people that are using what do you call it? A dashboard, a terminal?
We call it the terminal.
Terminal. I like that. For people who are using this terminal, you said they're treasurers, CFOs. Like, what's the persona of these people?
Yeah, that's right. Treasurers, CFOs.
And these are people, are they like maybe themselves and their team using this alongside other tools? Maybe how do you think about like, something we've been talking about today was, who was it? It was Caio from Lumix. We were talking about this really exciting, have you heard of the Lumix team in Brazil? This exciting deal that they're excited about. He didn't tell me who it was, but this importer-exporter business, and they're like embedding stablecoin account functionality within this like importer-exporter software that all these importer-exporters use in Brazil. So instead of like making these importer exporters use something separate, they're trying to embed this natively. And you guys are taking a different approach, not a better or worse approach, but it sounds like this is more of like, use this for this purpose. How do you think through having this new shiny Apple-like account play nicely with all of these other systems that an enterprise might be using?
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
that's a big question.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's a good question though. There's a few different ways to look at it, right? The first is that this is not a winner take all space. The space is absolutely massive. So there's going to be like multiple players that are doing really good work, and some are going to win with APIs, some are going to win without APIs. And it really is dependent on the segments of the market that you want to go after. Because if you want to serve marketplaces, or you want to serve ISVs, or you want to serve remittance companies or fintechs, like a lot of those companies, or even like bill pay platforms, a lot of those companies do want APIs. And so there's an entire suite of services that need to be built out for that, because you're plugging in what in essence is a payment rail to a platform that already has a number of like SMBs, on the platform. And so they just want to facilitate a slightly more efficient payment experience. So like that's one segment of the market. Where we're focused is really on a different segment of the market, one that is more like multinational business, traditional companies that have, vast supply chains around the world. And for that, there's two ways to think about that, right? So there are some companies out there that use our APIs, but so our terminal product is powered by a suite of APIs that we have built. Right? So our APIs are used to power what we have today.
Similar to Square in some ways, right? Like you start with the beautiful Apple product, and then you can, if you want to, I think that's a really better, I like that approach better. I think,
So we started as an API company, and then as we figured out who our ICP was, we were like, oh, this is actually how we bring it all together.
Let's go build it for them. And then, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So like for us, given the customer segment that we want to serve, having the terminal product makes a lot of sense at the moment, right? But there is a world where we have our APIs that are plugged into different systems, but that's a market, it's a go-to-market question. It's not a technical challenge. Mm-hmm. It's a, who do we want to serve and why? And so for us, it's like, we're not plugging into a lot of the same infrastructure that like the API companies are. We're taking a different approach and saying, actually, we want to own that user experience and make it really simple for the human using it.
And speaking of go-to-market, like, Stablecoin Conference, some companies are here and they're selling their products, or they're like, hey, we are trying to serve developers, or we're trying to sell this thing. Sounds like for you guys, maybe you're here more from like an integrations or like strategic partnership standpoint on go-to-market. How are you thinking about that? Because I'm imagining the treasurers and the CFOs who are using StableC or will use StableC probably not showing up to this. How are you getting them to know about you, and how are you getting them to resonate with what you guys can help with?
Yeah, it's I won't share all the secret sauce. I'll say it's a testimony to our CMO and our CRO.
Let's shout them out, Julie
and Tony Tom.
Okay.
So Julie Engel and Tony Tom, they're amazing. So we've got some like unique go-to-market approaches that we're using, and then our network and some other ways to get the attention of the traditional industries out there. And so that's kind of how we're going about it on the go-to-market side.
That's super vague.
Yeah.
It must be really saucy. Must be really good.
Yeah. Business is good. And when business is good, you don't give away the whole farm.
That makes sense. I'm just imagining like, an multinational agriculture convention or something you guys are speaking at, like John Deere sponsoring it. Well, that's cool. I wanted to go back to this because it was interesting. I was speaking to like a Canadian stablecoin issuer last week. There are some convictions it sounds like you have around where stablecoins are really going to be useful and where they're not. Tell me a bit more around, there's so much here, man. Like
we can talk for hours.
I want to
get some beers and then we'll do.
Come to Soho House later tonight. We're hosting this awesome event. So you have this setup where I always appreciate when people are like, stablecoins aren't like a cure-all for payments, like very, very effective in certain things, but they can't do everything and they shouldn't do everything. The JP Morgan Chase, Coca-Cola, like half of a basis point stuff. Like when you think of where stablecoins as infrastructure really shine versus not, and where you're seeing like the focus for your business really becoming like, oh, this is really, really solving a key pain. Help me like understand the differences between like the Canadian, like why that doesn't make sense versus the Ghana customer, like break that down a little bit more.
Yeah, so I think the key separation there is like stablecoins as they exist today are really good for cross-border payments into emerging economies. Right? Into
from G20
and or back out, right? So if you want to collect Argentinian peso or Kenyan shilling and go USDC to US dollar or euro, great use case, right? So bilateral flows into emerging markets, stablecoin is like a perfect use case for that. In the Western world, for payments into like Europe or like if you do USDC to pound sterling, maybe there's a trade to be done there, but the efficiency there isn't going to outweigh the cost ultimately that you can get wholesale FX from like a HSBC or Standard Chartered or JP Morgan, right? That said, in the Western world, why it makes sense, if I had to like steel man, why it makes sense to have a kind of Canadian dollar stablecoin is that when you think about, so payments, let's set that to a side, right? Now you have this entire other suite of on-chain financial services, and that is access to yield-bearing accounts, access to money market funds, access to treasuries, Robinhood launched tokenized equities. And so now like you've got literally the capital markets that are coming on-chain. Today, if you're a small business, what do you have access to? You just have a money market fund. It's like literally if you go onto, if there's any SMB company out there, or even if you have, like even us at StableC, we have a bank account. When we log on, we can move funds from our checking account to our savings account, right? We don't have access to the suite of capital market products that like a bigger company does. Why stablecoin in a given Western country is valuable is because once you get into stablecoin, that is the gateway for digital assets writ large. And the digital asset could be used for payments. It could be used for accessing on-chain loans. It could be used for accessing capital markets. So like on-chain RWAs, etc. And all of that stuff can become programmable over time. Whereas like today, if you're a small business and you want to move money into bonds as opposed to a savings account, okay, well, you got to figure out who's the bond provider. And you got to go do that. You got to get that integration or sign a contract. And it's very difficult, right? Realistically, if you think about 5, 10, 15 years from now, if you're a business in the Western world, and hopefully in the global South as well, you can take your local fiat, convert it into a stablecoin, and then use that stablecoin to unlock a suite of on-chain financial services, whether it be payments, maybe insurance at some point, maybe lending, maybe yield-bearing accounts, maybe RWAs, maybe tokenized equities. And like once that world comes into existence, you've just unlocked a new suite of financial services for an entire segment of different countries' economies that don't have the privilege of working with like a Citibank or JP Morgan, right? Like, and it's true for the vast majority of the world too, but like if you are a big company, you typically have the best products and services at your disposal, right? Like all the major banks out there, I've said a number of names, all of them are incredible. Those companies are a reason they have stood the test of time. Because if you get the privilege to bank with any one of them, any service is at your disposal. If you want forwards, if you want swaps, if you want...
What is it? Give some perspective on like, what do you actually, our business is not like, we haven't even raised a big round. Like you guys have raised, like, it sounds like still, even after raising your round or something, there's still this like massive bar to even have this like what do you actually like what kind of level do you need to reach to have that experience for these types of companies?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that we're here is to work with a lot of product partners to bring this stuff more to life. Like this is going to be an analogy that probably doesn't fare well over time, but ultimately like we want StableC to be the place where like if you are a treasurer or CFO or like even just a founder building a new business, if you want to participate in the on-chain economy, you come to StableC and it makes super, like it's very clear and makes it super intuitive. Maybe there's a world where you come to StableC, you get a stablecoin, and then with that stablecoin, you now have access to this world of on-chain finance that you didn't historically have because you didn't have the privilege of banking with like the major banks. And like that's what ultimately where we're driving. And so a lot of the infrastructure for like on-chain lending doesn't really exist today, but there's a lot of great companies out there that are building for that. Yield-bearing assets or yield-bearing accounts are here. Regulation is still up in the air on where that lands. A lot of companies define it as rewards versus actual security and like what that means under SEC law. So a lot like regulation still has to catch up here too. But regardless, like the ecosystem and the community in the stablecoin space is attracting like the best and brightest talent, and like the regulators are open to sitting down and having conversations to figure it out. If it's today, I don't know, but if it's in 5 years or 10 years, there's definitely going to be a world where like on-chain lending companies, become a unicorn. On-chain equities companies become on-chain RWAs. Like you're going to see just a birth and a true renaissance of like companies popping up in these different verticals, bringing traditional capital markets, traditional financial services on chain. And we want to be there to essentially be like, when you log into the internet, you log into Google, and like the internet's super complex under the hood, but like Google's super simple. You just search for something and you're like, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, ChatGPT is OpenAI is disrupting that a little bit, but it's a little bit like for us, we want to be the front door for on-chain financial service.
Yeah. I don't mean to like beat a dead horse with this Square thing, but I do think about like the little white reader effect of like get people to just start taking payments on the internet. Yep. Using a little white reader. If you win them with a little white reader, you win the ecosystem for their payment business, especially as they grow too. So it sounds like for you guys, as you think about the future, if we can win this like multinational or like institutional 80, 90%, like get a lot of those really core use cases for cross-border payments in the door, the little white reader phase of this, you can form that relationship with that treasury or finance team to say like, hey, maybe next month we're rolling out this new thing. And like, as the world economy moves on chain, they're already there with you guys.
Yeah. I mean, big time. Like, do we win Coca-Cola immediately? Like, no, probably not. But do we win a steel manufacturing company in St. Louis? Maybe we do. And where it grows to your white reader point, like for Square, is, if those companies will use their banks for 20 corridor, but if we can say, hey, we got you for Kenyan shilling, they start to trust our platform and start to believe in stablecoin, then it's like, hey, do you want actually access to USDC so we can take your idle stablecoins and just make some money for you, like on Saturday, Sunday when you're not using them? Yes. Okay. If that trust is built, then it's like, what else do you want? Sometimes treasurers will be like, hey, I kind of want to have a little bit of Bitcoin on my balance sheet, like Block does, right? But they're like, no one's really building. Like me as a steel manufacturing company in St. Louis, my kind of community credit union or like local bank doesn't offer me Bitcoin, right? So how do I get exposure to that? And like, I can swap into and out of treasury bills, generate 4% yield, and then come back to US dollar same day. Okay, that's interesting, right? So it starts with that trust, and that trust for us is one in a select corridor, maybe 2 corridors. And as that trust is built, you're educating the market in some way too of like, okay, hey, I've been using this thing. I trust it for this. Now what else is possible? And so long as we continue to work with the ecosystem and find the right partners for lending and RWAs.
There's so much upside.
Yeah, and making it super simple. And we want to be that kind of layer that humans are like, hey, I get it. And I've learned about stablecoin, all of its opportunities through the terminal, through the StableC pieces of infrastructure they provided me, and like now I want more.
Yeah,
and that's where you get that catalyst for on-chain activity.
Tanner, this has been so fun. I'm excited for more of these conversations with you on camera, off camera. Like, there's so much to discuss. Final question for you, as you think about maybe the thing that is, you've mentioned this a couple of times, like the Ghana use case, and it sounds like the way that you guys are really starting these commercial relationships is like identifying that one like pain point or that one corridor. What would be like when you're in these, what are you trying to listen for? And what can I be listening for? What can people who want to support you guys be listening for as pain? Where it's like, oh yeah, that StableC's thing that they're really good at. Like, it sounds like it's like somewhere in this like corridor problem.
Yeah.
What does that sound like?
Yeah. There's a few things to listen for. One, so all those big companies, like if you're a Coca-Cola, I keep manifesting Coca-Cola. So maybe somebody listening to this podcast will,
as I drink my Pepsi,
or Pepsi, we would love to work with you. So if you're one of those big companies out there,
like Pepsi in this clip, and maybe someone will see it.
That's right. Pepsi, if you're listening, reach out.
Someone will see it on the marketing team. Share it, put it in Slack.
So there's like two pain points. One is for like the big companies that we want to work with. The first pain point is settlement time. If you're struggling to get money into a country, you can reduce your pre-funding time materially if you use stablecoin, right? So in corridors where the correspondent banking system doesn't work that well, let's have that conversation about stablecoin and how we can reduce your pre-funding times so you can essentially generate capital efficiency on your movements around the world. Second part of that, and this is a big one, is cash trap solutions. So a lot of the big companies out there will sell their products into XYZ country. They generate revenue in XYZ country. Countries that have capital controls on them make it very difficult to repatriate that money back. You could make insert X country. I won't name country names here, but insert X country that has strict capital controls. Let's say you make 200 million in revenue in a given month, and you want to consolidate that on your P&L in US dollars.
And there's like, I have an entity for my $200 million company there.
That's right.
And there's a bank account there, and it's like, they want to keep it there. The country wants to keep it there in the bank.
Yeah, exactly. And as a result of that, like, it is a crazy world. Like, you would be shocked about how much money is actually trapped in different countries.
What's the problem? Like, is it just like an incredibly, I mean, I'm imagining it's slow, but like, how do these countries like keep it there? Like, what sort of guardedness?
Yeah. So the
penalties, or what is it?
Yeah. So the banks in countries with like, well, yeah, all the banks, generally speaking, in any country is governed by a central bank. Central bank sets the policies for all the underlying banks in terms of what they can do in terms of money in, money out, how much they need to have on their balance sheet at any given time. So
I'm laughing because I had this problem at like a so small of a fraction. I had this like old college bank account in the US.
Yeah.
And I had like a few $1,000s in there from college, and I was like, I'm not using this anymore. Like, I need to transfer this out. And my community bank in Columbia, Missouri had like $1,000 external withdrawal limit per day. It's like, what the hell? Like, I had to go back every single day and like do this. I'm like, if I'm experiencing this at this level, I'm imagining there must be things going on at that level.
Yeah. I mean, imagine you and I created a kind of a cloud service that we sold into X country, and we made like 500 million in revenue, or I mean, keep it lower. Maybe we made 50 million revenue in a given month. And we're like, okay, we would love to get that out of X country's fiat back to US dollar. And then the banks, which are governed by the central banks, are like, actually, you can only take out $1 million per month, because we don't want capital flight in the country. So now you and I have just started a business. We're like, we have a ton of revenue, but we can't use it because it's stuck in said country. So how do you actually use stablecoin there to help get money out without essentially triggering capital flight from that country?
Yeah. I'm imagining a very sensitive reality. So we have money trapped. I go to StableC. I create an account. And what does the connectivity layer look like for me to get that $50 million back using stablecoins? Like, practically, what happens there?
Yeah.
How do you play nice? Because you have to play nice with those banks.
Yeah, big time. To the extent that I can say, I mean, like, only what happens is, if you're a given country, you don't want capital leaving said country, because it ultimately devalues your currency if it's in a large enough tranche. And so the question to be solved is, how do you keep the money in?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So like, how do you not have capital flight? Because like, no one wants to devalue a country's currency, like, full stop, right?
Yeah.
And the promise of like crypto and stablecoin is, honestly, I mean, it depends on who you talk to, but like, it is not to disrupt the economies of different countries around the world. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's to bolster those economies. So there are ways in which you can think about using stablecoin as a mechanism to not disrupt a country's currency, such that it ends up having an effect on.
Just where like local liquidity providers come in really handy here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you have strategic relationships on the liquidity side in these regions. You, in some ways, like, step in for these companies who are not, like, for the use case you mentioned, they're stepping in, they're keeping liquidity potentially there, putting it on chain, letting them take it, but it still can like technically live in the banking system potentially there. Is that kind of the model?
Yeah, and this is not a new concept per se. Like, big banks do this in terms of forwards and futures and derivatives. Like, there's a reason why all these complex financial products exist, right? And so there's a way in which you can take some of the complexity away and make that a little bit more simple. So money can flow porously and a bit more efficiently, but also not having an effect on the local currency to the extent that it is a negative effect, right? Like,
So interesting.
yeah. I mean, the whole promise of this whole like stablecoin endeavor, whether it be US dollar stablecoin or insert X country stablecoin, is really to bring the global economy together such that it functions in a bit more efficient ways. Because like, if you really think about, like, zoom out to the nth degree, if money can flow porously and settle a little bit quicker and be a little bit more cost efficient, not only do the businesses in countries around the world have a little bit more operating capital, they don't need to take out like a payday loan or like a same day loan to cover operating expenses. So businesses they make a little bit more money that trickles down into consumers that are working at these businesses, hopefully will get an increase in pay, etc. And overall, even if you reduce or you increase capital efficiency by 0.5% in each country for all the businesses that work there, you're bolstering the economic GDP of that country over time, right? And so that is that is the biggest vision that stablecoin could have. It doesn't have to be US dollar stablecoin, it could be any insert X stablecoin. But the promise is that through making the global economy a bit more connected, that you can bolster the livelihoods of working people around the world and for businesses small and large around the world. And that should have a knock-on effect on global economic GDP and hopefully pushes us towards a more prosperous world.
Wow. All right. Well, perfect place to end. I know I said like final question like 20 minutes ago. This was so fun. That was Tanner from StableC. Thanks for listening.
Ti ricordi quella sera che per gioco tu baciai? Sembrava solo un'avventura di Palmar.